Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of whatever we're calling the show now, Breaking News, although we're going to change the name of that. But so good to see everybody here. I'm Julie Roginsky here with Michelle Kinney and Jeff Jarvis for our weekly roundup of all things media and culture and Hollywood and a little politics sprinkled in. I know, Jeff, that you want us to talk a little politics at the outset because your former congressman, who now moved to a different district, Tom Malinowski, had an election yesterday to fill the vacant seat of Mikey Sherrill, who's now the governor of New Jersey. Full disclosure, I ran the super PAC for Tom Malinowski. Full disclosure, Michelle made some incredible ads for Tom Malinowski's super PAC, which we can show one of these days.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic ads.
Very nice.
Yes. And it's a very strange thing that happened. He was leading quite extensively in polling that I did throughout. We did a poll last Friday. The poll showed that he was still leading quite extensively. If there was going to be low turnout, if there was going to be high turnout, he was going to have problems with Ana Lilia Mejia, who's Bernie Sanders' former political director, a very well-known progressive, not just around the country, but in New Jersey, and that he was going to be in a dogfight with her. And in fact, the turnout was just through the roof, which underscores just the incredible passion that Democrats have to vote, even on a Thursday, frigid, cold Thursday in February, which is not typically when people vote. And AIPAC spent about $2.5 million against Malinowski, and I would say another million or so in support of another candidate named Tahisha Way, who's the former lieutenant governor of New Jersey. Couple of takeaways. This race is not over. Malinowski, as we do this right now, is about 500, little less than 500 votes down. New Jersey has a law where there's a week to get all the absentee ballots in, the vote by mail ballots in, to count them, something Trump wants to get rid of. But we'll see if he's able to make it up with those ballots. He did very, very well in the vote by mail portion of this race. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a lot of votes to make up, but we don't know the answer to that. We do know a couple of things. One is AIPAC aimed big and lost.
Yes. In either case, whoever wins this, AIPAC loses.
They really shot themselves in the foot.
Well, they would say not. They would say that they elected somebody who they think is a radical leftist, as to however they want to put it. And in June, they're going to take her out with a candidate close to AIPAC. Friends, I say this as a Jew who is deeply committed to Israel. It ain't going to happen. It's not. Because what I can tell you from polling that we did, and also I can tell you just from the money that started pouring in when AIPAC came in against Malinowski, AIPAC's very presence is what helped galvanize votes for Malinowski. Yep. So they got to come up with a different strategy. And I say this as somebody who shares their mission of a strong and vibrant Israel, does not necessarily share their mission to a strong and vibrant Bibi Netanyahu, but nevertheless does not like to see this kind of thing happen. You got to come up with a different plan, friends at AIPAC, because you just, however you want to spin it, this is a cell phone. And if you run somebody against whoever the nominee is going to be in June, whether it's Malinowski or Mejia, that person will also lose.
What's interesting to me, Julie, is that the commercials were just dreadful.
Oh,
awful against Malinowski, and dishonest, in that there's no mention of Israel. There's no mention of the real issues behind it.
Exactly.
It was attacking him for having voted for ICE appropriations, who didn't at the time. He's not been in office of late, and also some stock stuff that was a little bit clumsy, but that he fixed up and was fine. So they went after him on those two things, but that wasn't the honest issue. And so when people found out this was AIPAC behind it, I think they were triply resentful of the intrusion in our districts.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just kind of bonkers. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, it is. And Malinowski was the only one who had attack ads. He was the only candidate in the race who had, somebody, especially with considerable amounts of cash, swinging against him in the New York media market, running on broadcast and cable. If you were watching Jeopardy in the last couple weeks, just in
Oh,
that half hour.
all
It
over.
was like constant, like every single break. And then there'd be a couple other ads, peppered throughout as well. But I mean, it was relentless. And to your point, Jeff, and it's something obviously Julie and I have talked about at length, is just the misrepresentation of facts, and completely disingenuous, which is not new to politics, but in this particular scenario, I thought was, extra sinister. And it's listen, if it's not Malinowski, I'm glad it's her. She's a fighter. I think that she's somebody who's going to come swinging in the way that I think that the base really wants and needs, and will not put up with, the Jeffries and Schumer's bullshit in this environment, which I think is great. But, cautionary tale.
So I got a few questions for you, political experts, on this one. One is, I'm curious what you heard about AIPAC, particularly in your polling and discussions, and whether the effort to is AIPAC over? Is the effort to win over people to Netanyahu over? Did everything go too far? Question one. Question two is, Anna Mejia is fascinating. She, as you say, she was a Bernie acolyte. Bernie endorsed her. AOC endorsed her. Baraka endorsed her. Elizabeth Warren. But I also wonder whether with Mamdani, with AOC, I just saw a story today about how she's broadening her position on the stage. Is real progressivism making inroads in ways we wouldn't have thought as a reaction to the Trumpism? So those are just two questions for you both.
So I would say, well, I'll answer the first one first. I did not have the money to poll at the end, AIPAC or anything else. Every cent that I had to put into, Michelle knows this because Michelle was with me along for this ride. I had to put every cent that I had into media. So the only reason I polled was to see whether potentially somebody was gaining a Malinowski where I would have to go negative on them. And at the end, I realized there was only one candidate to potentially go negative on, and he was so inconsequential, and that was the party boss endorsed candidate, Brendan Gill. He was such a non-factor and so inconsequential that I wasn't going to even bother spending a dime on him. Although he thought I was coming for him and made some stupid mistakes because I got into his head, which is fantastic. But there was no point of going after Mejia. Just there wasn't. Plus, I like her.
And going after AIPAC,
and going after AIPAC,
even so tricky, right?
Going after AIPAC, no. I mean, look, I wasn't on the campaign. I was doing the PAC, so the campaign, from what I saw, I wasn't allowed to coordinate with them. Certainly made it very clear to anybody who would listen, this is AIPAC coming after them. I will say, this is not a poll, but it is some data, that the minute the New York Times and others did a story that AIPAC was in this race, I started raising colossal amounts of money. And by colossal amounts of money, I mean checks with individuals writing $50,000 checks, $100,000 checks, more $100,000 checks. I went from having $100,000 in the bank in the beginning of January, to pretty much raising almost $750,000.
Wow.
And not in small amounts. And people coming in and just saying, this is just crazy bullshit and we're not going to put up with this. So, again, I don't say this with any relish, because I know there's very many differences with AIPAC people in the audience, and probably also with people here in this conversation. I am, I'm a Zionist Jew. I am. But what AIPAC did is counterproductive. And it was a cell phone, and it exposed the fact that they are loathed in the Democratic primary base. And furthermore, it also exposed something else that I think is really important for our leaders in Washington to pay attention to. Ana Lilia Mejia won because she came across as a fighter. Yep. She came across as somebody that was not her slogan was unbought and unbossed. She was not going to go along to get along. She never has in her career. I've known her a very long time. She was not going to go along to, in her career to be unbought, unbossed, whatever. She was going to do everything she could to take it to Trump, and people resonated with that. And I want to be very clear again as to what we're talking about. Michelle and I talked about this on the morning show, but it's important for people to know. This is not an AOC district, in that AOC comes from an urban, diverse, less affluent district. This is one of the most affluent districts in the nation. It is very white. I shouldn't say very white, but it's whiter than AOC district. It is more Gen X than most districts, and it is suburban. It is the district where, when you live in New York City and you have a nice career and then you pop out a few kids, you decide to pick up and you move to Montclair.
It's where the gangs of oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's the Upper West Side of New Jersey.
It's the Upper West Side of New Jersey.
I was going to say, it's where the gangs of wine moms go to buy houses and backyards.
Yeah. And these houses are like multi-million-dollar houses. And like Stephen Colbert lives in this district. Bobby Brown, makeup Bobby Brown, lives in this district. The entire New York Times editorial board lives in this district. Half of NPR lives in this district. Like, this is who we're talking about here. And those people have had it. Those people have had it. And those people have money, and those people have power, in that they have the ability to either write checks to politicians or to write editorials of the New York Times. These are people that, if I were Chuck Schumer, I would start taking very seriously. And they're sending a message to Democrats that they're fed up with the fecklessness. And they want it, because both Malinowski and Mejia ran on that message. And one of the two of them is going to Congress. The go along, get along candidates, Brendan Gill, who was the establishment candidate, who was like, no, I belong here. Because he came in dead last out of the top tier, dead last. Embarrassing. He lost his own home county to 3 other people.
And his former boss was like, warming up and butting up to Trump during his last. I mean, come on.
He did an ad with, he was endorsed by Phil Murphy, the former governor. He had Murphy in the ad. Is a repudiation of Murphy, who hangs out with Jared and Ivanka. All of this was the stupidest cell phone I could possibly imagine by the party organization in New Jersey to run this idiot, but also to even pop their heads up, because it was such a repudiation.
Do you think that Democratic congressional leadership is seeing this and is hearing this? Because I don't see any evidence yet.
I don't see any evidence. But I'll tell you this. If Chuck Schumer thinks he's not going to lose to AOC, he's going to.
Yeah.
You just saw what happened in New Jersey. They're telling you what's going to happen here.
Yep. I'll go knock on doors for.
This is.
Oh yeah.
This is Chuck Schumer's backyard. This is Brownstone, Brooklyn, the New Jersey version.
Yep. Exactly.
This is Brownstone, Brooklyn, Senator Schumer, your people. And they're sending you a message. These are people who moved from your district in Brooklyn to New Jersey to have a little bit of a backyard.
Yep.
I years ago, Tom Lehrer did an event at Montclair State, and he polled the audience. He said, "How many of you when you were young, starting out, you lived in Manhattan? Hands up. When you had your first kid, you moved to Brooklyn? Hands up. When you had your second kid, you moved to Montclair? Hands up." It's all the same. And Jeffries and Schumer. They're not savable, though, in terms of thinking that they're going to suddenly be fighters. They're not. They've shown their characters.
No. They've already shown us who they are. Believe them.
Yeah.
Believe who they are. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Democrats, I think, have now shown that they are absolutely fine eating their own and saying we're going to reject feckless leadership and we're going to make changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big message.
Listen,
look no further to Eric Cantor. Look what happened. Look what happened to him. The Republicans went through this in 2010, and there is now going to be a Tea Party from the left, in which I don't think that in our generation or in modern history has ever seen.
Yeah.
Because all of these little, disagreements that we have in this opposition coalition go out the window when we are dealing with a rise of authoritarianism and fascism in this country of the likes we have never seen, and a man in the White House who is out of control.
Yeah.
All of that shit goes out the window. All of it.
Yep. Even the New York Times editorial board today moved up its little silly little scale on free speech one more notch toward authoritarianism. They don't realize we're fully there,
right?
10 on all.
Welcome.
But it's so bad. Even the New York Times board has to be forced to reckon with it.
Yeah.
Believe your eyes.
Fascinating story here in Jersey. Fascinating. I'm so glad that you to get your inside perspective on this.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to say this. I have known Tom Malinowski a very long time. I have always said he's kind of my platonic ideal of what a congressman is. The issues that I care about are the issues that he cares about.
He's smart. He's educated. He's experienced.
Yeah. And he's a wonderful person.
Nice guy.
In a sea of just utterly awful people in Washington, he's always been just a wonderful human being.
Yeah. And he's an immigrant himself too.
Yeah,
I mean, he came to this country. He understands. He understands this. Yeah.
I adore him. I truly do. On a personal level and also on a political level, he's just he's it, right? When it comes to just a good public servant who's written it for all the right reasons. Having said that, if not Malinowski, I am so glad that it's Ana Lilia Mejia.
Amen. Amen.
Because this is sending the same message to our own party to buckle up and to, I hate to say man up because those people you guys don't push out babies. So I would say woman up.
Sure don't.
That's tough, right? Woman up and start standing up to Trump. How many more signals do you need to hear from the Democratic base? You heard it in urban districts, and now you're hearing it in suburban districts. And if you're hearing this in Montclair, New Jersey, and Morris County, New Jersey, one of the most affluent counties in the nation, truly up there with I don't know, Tribeca and Beverly Hills and all these other places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parts of Miami, really affluent. If you're hearing it from there, friends, how many more signs do you need before you actually decide to get a backbone and stand up to this guy? Nobody wants to hear about sterling worded letters. Nobody wants to hear about how you're negotiating. They have a maximalist position, so you're negotiating from their maximalist position. Right. No, shut it down until you get what you want. And if you don't get what you want, at least you're showing the base that you're ready to fight for it.
And leadership didn't go far enough on the last shutdown and healthcare. And I fear that they're not going to go far enough on ICE.
Nope.
And for God's sakes, the only stand of ICE is get the fuck out.
That's it.
And that's the starting point. And
take the masks off. Yeah.
Take the masks off. You need a warrant. On and on and on and on, and fight to the end for that. And if you lose, you lose. But you can't compromise too early, which they've been doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just I don't even know what to say. It's
what does this do across the country to David Hogg played around with the National Committee and then left and all that. If you're a progressive in the Bernie, AOC, whoever in that stripe, how many people are waking up this morning saying, "Oh hell, I didn't think I could primary people who are in now. Is there going to be a lot more primary and going on?"
It's getting late in the day. It's getting late in the day to primary people. I mean, some primaries are in the summer and September, so maybe.
Yeah.
If I had any interest in running for an office this year, next year, any year,
now's the time.
Now's the time. And all you have to do is show that you're a fighter. And there are scant members of Congress.
Well said.
Right now.
Yep.
So if you want to go take somebody out because you don't think they're fighting hard enough, friends, you're going to win. Ana Lilia Mejia spent a tiny fraction of what everybody else spent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ground game.
Yeah, I saw commercials for her, but very few was the Bernie ad. What do you guess her budget was versus Malinowski's or Gill's?
I don't know. I would say Malinowski's between what his campaign spent and what I spent was about $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
I would say combined. And
she was a tenth of that?
Probably not a tenth, but maybe 20%. Maybe at best third. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if she had outside support from a super PAC or anything. I don't think so. Maybe.
Was there a lot of on the ground support from people coming over from New York?
There was she had a tremendous ground game, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, she's very much, look, as I said, her slogan was "Unbought and unbossed." She also benefited from the fact that nobody went after her, right? So you had four principal candidates in this race. One was Malinowski, $4 million all combined thrown against him. Tahisha Way, who was lieutenant governor, AIPAC, I believe, was behind all of that, all of the positive outcomes.
She was trying to position herself as the Trump fighter,
right? But not successfully so. She had a couple of $1 million spent on her behalf. Brendan Gill, who came in dead last of the four, spent, I would say, probably between a super PAC that was supporting him and whatever he raised, probably also close to $1 million. She spent the least out of all of them.
Well, what's interesting to me then too here is, I mean, in the day, Bernie bros drove me nuts. And it's not that I disagreed with everything Bernie said, but the way that they position themselves in the world, the kind of veganism of politics, drove me nuts. But in recent history, I've got to say again and again, I look at myself and I say, Bernie's right.
Yeah, we were saying that this morning.
We just said that this morning. We just said that this morning.
B, I think the important thing is that the party is shitty at organizing, but this progressive wing is brilliant at organizing. And it's the organize. It's not just me. It's not media anymore.
Yep.
We keep on saying this, right? The revolution will not be televised, all that stuff. We keep on spending money on television. But I think that this is a demonstration of the ex-media value of organizing.
Well, it's interesting because I have data to back that up, Jeff. In this poll that I did, it was just a tracker poll. So again, all I did was test support. I didn't test issues. I didn't test anything other than that. She was getting predominantly support. I mean, just overwhelming support among voters under 50 of color. Now, that's not this district necessarily, but she turned them out. She turned them out. And she is very emblematic of the rest of the country where young voters don't give a shit. Like, they just don't care about broadcast TV anymore. They don't watch it. They don't know about it.
Right.
What they want is somebody who goes to them and says, I'm going to fight like how
Mamdani ran his race.
Yeah, it's Mamdani. She had the same social media from the Mamdani.
And it's a friend who told me this.
Yep.
Right. It's that connection, the network community connection, that really matters. There's this is a weird story, but there's a dog on Twitter I absolutely love named Simon. Crazy little dog, little tiny legs, big ears, wacky. Yeah. A young journalist named Sophie Vershbow is his owner, and she posts things all the time. He's dorky, and I love watching the dog, and it brightens my day. Okay. Why does this matter? So Sophie, fairly early on in the New York mayoral race, again, she's a young journalist, she's smart, and when she said, when I saw her enthusiasm for Mamdani, and I was behind the curve, and I just looked at that and I said, oh, there's something here, just because that one person, and looked into what got enthusiastic about Mamdani and so on and so forth. That's all it takes is somebody you trust, who's a human, not a bot, who's not a media message, to make you pay attention.
Yep.
And I'm speaking to the political pros, and I'm not. But the reason I'm focusing on all this is that in a show about media, I think this, I don't want to over-interpret this election, but I think if you look at Mamdani, if you look at other elections going on, maybe we are at the point where television becomes tertiary.
You raised such an excellent point, and I think this brings back to what Michelle and I are trying to do here on May Day, and you're obviously part of that, and everybody in this community is a part of that. So Michelle and I Michelle decided, and brought me along, that the key to getting people engaged and energized about politics is not just talking about politics all the time, it's talking about culture. And I promise we're going to get to talking about culture on this show in a few minutes. But the whole point about May Day was to build a community of people who knew each other, trusted each other, developed relationships with each other. And there are people in this show, in this chat, who are part of this community who watch us every single morning, watch this show every week, watch other shows that we do every week, who are from all over the world, truly from Australia and from Canada and from Britain and from other parts of Europe. And I think we have some from South America, and I think we have some from Asia as well, and from the Middle East, a couple.
Hello to you all.
Yeah, and certainly all over the country. We don't know each other in real life, but I think because we spend every day with each other, and people are in each other's chats, like there are people in this chat who we know their struggles, right? We know they're going through some health issues, or we know their parents are going through some health issues. They know about me going through some health issues with my parents. And we kind of have built this incredible community of people, and we know them and we trust them, and they trust us. And I think that's the future, right? Because as somebody who comes from a TV background, it used to be that you would look into the camera and you would talk to the camera and you didn't know who's on the other side of that camera. Today, we know who's on the other side of this camera, all the people in this chat, all the people who write us afterwards. And I think that's the future. And I think that's how you build coalitions politically as well.
And it's a more democratic future once
Correct.
It gets momentum. It's not about scale. It's not about, I mean, so I argue about the death of mass media, which I've done this shtick here. And I hold true to that. The one area where you need scale is an election. You need a majority. You need the mass there. But the mass isn't a single entity that can be delivered to whether to an advertiser or a politician. It's a whole bunch of communities. And we have to return to that notion of society at human scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, it's not just what we say on the screen. There are people in this chat who talk to each other, like Michelle and I unfortunately, all the time, run late to our show in the morning, right? So it's supposed to start at 8 a.m. We sometimes start at 8:05, 8:06, 8:07. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes I have to yell at my son to actually get himself to school. So it takes a little bit longer. And today I was not successful. He decided he was sick. But the point is, before we get on the screen, there are people in the chat all talking to each other. We see it, all talking to each other and talking about stuff that they've developed, relationships that they've developed among each other. And so in that chat, if somebody were to say, hey, I want you to vote for Jeff Jarvis for mayor, there'll be a lot more trustworthiness because it's people they've developed relationships with, I think, than if somebody on TV or on CNN were to say, hey, I want you to vote. Like, who cares what the New York Times editorial board has to say? It doesn't matter. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and valuing that. I mean, so when I started newspaper sites for Advance, NJ.com and others way back when, way back in the 90s, we valued interactivity. We valued chat and forums and all that. But then learned very quickly, there's a cost to, you can't just build a town without having a civic infrastructure for it, right? And so paper after paper after paper and magazines all abandoned this. They should have seen that the future of media was to be maypoles of community that bring people together the way you do. Instead, they said, oh, what a pain in the ass they all are. They're a bunch of jerks. Shut them off. And they lost any hope of their future as a result. Back to media.
Yeah. So Michelle's got to drop off for a second to take care of something. But I do want to talk about, Jeff, just what's been happening lately with, this whole week has just been insane again in the media with this Peter Attia thing. I don't know if you've been following it in CBS.
Yep.
Barry Weiss, who apparently doesn't want to be owned by the libs, so therefore is going to keep somebody who's an Epstein buddy.
Who's even without Epstein, he was a nut job anyway.
A total nut job. A total. Well, you know what? We don't know if he was a total nut job. He was quite a controversial person. And this whole move away from science is really starting to become a bigger problem than just RFK Jr. Is starting to percolate to a crisis. And so she was going to give him a platform. And again, some people say the earth is round. Some people say the earth is flat. We've got to platform both sides. Well, actually, you don't need to platform both sides.
Now is the time to stand up for facts and sense, and media are frightened of doing that.
Yeah.
They're frightened of, I mean, again, I mentioned the Times authoritarian scales. They're all kind of middling. Oh, we can see it on the horizon. We are there, but they are frightened of judgment. And there's a crisis in science communication that's going on. I'm also working with the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science at Stony Brook, where they're working on these things. And part of this is to make scientists better communicators and make media understand the science better, which they don't. But science is under attack from every side. Every institution in society is under attack. Medicine, science, free and fair elections, free press, education, the law, elections. Did I say that already? But it's an important institution that's out there. So when Barry Weiss comes along and says, I want to hire people who don't believe in germ theory, and that you should listen to them because they have opinions that are worth hearing because they're different.
Yeah,
that's insane. It's insane. And then when he turns out to be associated with Epstein, and there's others. Niall Ferguson is no OT. He's got a reputation that's not down there, but I find him to be a jerk. And she's going for, it's that free press effort to find the people who are supposedly contrarian for the sake of their contrarianness, rather than for the substance of their ideas, knowledge, experience, and education.
Yeah. I want to call up one thing here that you tweeted about, which I think is incredibly scary. I'm going to show this image and then I want you to talk about it because this is actually your tweet. What's going on here?
So out of nowhere, I said ICE is running ads, but it's obviously a group called American Sovereignty. So it's a front is running 2 ads everywhere. What surprised me was they're running them on MS Now. People got mad about Versant, and I don't know that Versant had any role in accepting these ads because these ads can be placed on local avails with your cable channels and your cable systems and so on and so forth. But the point was they were choosing to post them even on MS Now. And there's 2 ads. One tries to humanize the murderers of ICE, and the other tries to dehumanize the victims of ICE. And so the first one, and the video is also there, is I have a picture on the screen for those of you who aren't watching. A typical American town, you could just guess it's all white with a flag fluttering, and our mission to make America a safer place to live. And they're trying to present the ICE folk as your neighbors, as veterans, as first responders, as coaches, as good people doing a tough job out there. And we should be empathetic to them because they're doing something better they love our country. And then the other ad flashes brown faces one after another with words like murderer and molester and so on and so forth, and then tries to demonize immigrants, saying that they are ICE is doing us the favor of getting rid of them from the country and how wonderful ICE is. I'm curious on your perspective as someone who runs media campaigns on the wisdom, practicality of this. But they've got a lot of money. This thing's running a lot, again and again and again. And if they're running on MS Now, they're running heavier on other places.
On other places. Look, on MS Now, I think they're kind of trolling.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
that's the point of that, and to get under your skin and to get under other people's skin. I think what's happening is that they are out in the open about their racism. They have been recruiting consistently we've talked about this before. They've been using neo-Nazi memes to recruit, which we would not know about. But if you're a neo-Nazi, you certainly do. So I did a whole Substack about this. But, they have a meme of Uncle Sam looking at, those old-fashioned European, arrows, like this way to Paris, this way to London, this way to, Berlin. So this way says civilization, this way says, I don't know, hell, and so on. It's Uncle Sam looking, deciding which way to go. And underneath it says, which way, American man.
Right.
Now, you look at this and you're like, I don't even understand what this is about. However, if you're a neo-Nazi, you know exactly what this is about. And I had to do a deep dive into this disgusting racism. And now I know. In the 1970s, there was a very influential neo-Nazi white supremacist book written by a man whose name I cannot recall right now, called Which Way, Western Man.
Yep.
And it basically talked about how people of color and Jews were trying to take over, and which way was the West going to go? Were they going to allow this to happen, or were they going to allow Western civilization, i.e. white nationalist civilization, to thrive? So again, if this is something that resonates with you, you know exactly what ICE is doing.
Right.
They had, I think it was DHS put out and you know this, we've talked about this too, put out a tweet saying one country, one people, one, it wasn't leader, but it was like one heritage. Well, in German, replace heritage with leader, and it would be Ein Reich, Ein Volk.
And blood and soil.
Blood and soil. And that is consistently, that of course is from, Nazi Germany. So that is consistently memes that they do. I mean, it's just, it's appalling. I mean, it's just appalling. And it's, I don't know what else to really do about it other than to say that this is what they're going for. They're now openly, and we see this because Trump yesterday tweeted out, which we're not going to post here, we did it on the morning show, this horrible meme of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as monkeys, as apes in the jungle. And you had pushback on both sides of the aisle talking about how this is wrong.
Because it's so obvious.
So obvious. And Tim Scott, who is, I believe, the only African-American Republican senator, if I'm not mistaken, from South Carolina, tweeted out, praying it was fake. It wasn't fake, Senator, because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. The president should remove it. To which I ask, what's the other racist things you've seen out of this White House if you think this is the most racist one, right?
Well, I think it was somebody like Scott. Did they smell a little bit of death and trying to separate themselves a bit? But this is in the case of the Obama video and the monkey reference. That's so obvious, no one can miss it.
Well,
the racism of it is out there.
Caroline Levitt, of course, in her best effort, I got to give her an A for effort there. Tweeted out, he's just talking about it. He's the king of the jungle. And the rest of these people are just, nothing. He's like, that's what this is about. Okay. Right. You are a racist. Your boss is a racist. He does not hide it, and neither do you for defending it. That's all.
And we have to start calling it that. And in this case, when it's that obvious, it does get called out. We saw that in this case. People said it was racist. Hallelujah. But what our dear media don't do is what you did a minute ago, which is to look at the history and the context of the signaling in Ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer.
Yeah.
And to explain to people this is what's going on. But they're afraid of doing that. They don't look at history. They think they write first draft of history. B, they're afraid of making that judgment.
Yeah.
You have to be so far over the line portraying a black president as a monkey. Okay, we can all say that's racism. Well, there's a hell of a lot short of that I wouldn't call subtle, but that requires explanation, and they don't do it. I'll just pass this by. I
mean, it kind of just happens, right? And the part that drives me crazy, and we talked about this in the morning show, Michelle and I, but Jeff, if you ever tweeted this meme out, or I tweeted this meme out, which of course would never even cross our mind to do because we're not racist. But let's say some dog catcher tweeted this meme out. That person's career would be over. I mean, it would be done.
Yeah.
I mean, I run campaigns for a living. Like, it would be over. You wouldn't be able to explain it away by saying, oh, no. I took the first black president, the first black first lady. I dressed them up as apes and I put them, in the most racist way possible in the jungle. But wait, no. What that's really about is that I'm the king of the jungle and they're all, okay. It wouldn't even pass the laugh test. And yet the media, I feel feels like Trump's racism is baked in because it has been on parade for so long that there's really no point in talking about it.
Well, the other, yes, I agree with all that. The other thing here, I'm curious to hear your views on this, Julie, is that I think reporters still expect a norms-based discussion.
Oh, yes.
Where, they should be concerned about reaction to these things, when in fact the reaction is exactly what they want. The point is to be as outrageous as possible, flood the zone with shit. The point of saying these horrible things is to signal belonging to each other. Point A. Point B, on Morning Joe constantly, it's him trying to, well, don't the Republicans see their polls are down, and if they keep on doing this, they're going to lose elections. Stephen Miller doesn't give a rat's ass about polls.
Oh.
To the contrary, I think the point is to be as outrageous as possible is their version of victory, to push the window, to push norms out of the way, to push toward extremism, and to make extremism part of normal discourse. And that's where they succeed, and that's where media help them by quoting this stuff without judging, without recognizing the history and context, without labeling, without explaining. And I'm curious whether, do you think the White House actually gives a damn about polls?
No, because he does not care about what the American people think, because he doesn't intend to respect what the American people think. I mean, I remember after the first midterms, or maybe the second midterms with Bush, he finally fired Rumsfeld. Remember, because the war, it was the second midterms. The war had been fought. The campaign had been fought so much on the Iraq War. He needed to throw somebody under the bus, and that person was the Secretary of Defense. So Rumsfeld had to go, and he basically said, "It is with deep regret that I'm getting rid of Donald Rumsfeld, but message received, American voters."
Right.
It's just.
Yeah, and when you call upon the Bushes as a barometer of sanity and sense, it says how far we've come.
Yeah.
But they did care. Trump cares about victories. He cares about not losing elections. True, but the larger point, the Project 2025, is all about radicalizing as much of the country as they can, making it impossible for sanity and progression to win, and they're doing a damn good job of that.
I just want a little programming note. Michelle just texted me. She's having awful construction noise in her apartment, so she had to jump. Sorry about that. But Jeff and I'll carry on. Look, it is debilitating. It is debilitating from the point of view of a consumer of news to see what's happening, right? Like, it is just absurd that we're sitting here calling this what it is, and nobody cares. Like, that's, it's not that nobody cares. It's just, it's baked in, right? We're all like very blasé about it. The press is very blasé about it. Everything's just fine. And Trump doesn't care because nobody ever holds him accountable. It's Steve Bannon. I keep going back to that Atlantic article, which I just strongly urge everybody to read. A few weeks ago, his interview with Steve Bannon, the Atlantic did. And it was basically about that. It was, we are going to do whatever we want. We're going to take the most maximalist approach possible because there's no pushback. And,
exactly that. Yep.
We sat here for the first 10, 15 minutes talking about NJ11, right? We talked about the Democratic primary in New Jersey, but it's the same part and parcel. There's the through line here, which is people in the Democratic base want pushback from their elected officials, but also Americans want pushback from their media. And it's not making you biased.
Yes.
Something racist.
Right.
It is racist.
And it's not helpful to call that thing which we all know is racist. Fine. That's a given. You're going to do that. Monkey costumes, yes. Boom, done. It's only helpful if you dig in deeper and see the racist roots of everything else that is going on. every story in America comes back to race, and I've learned that too late in life.
Yeah.
But that's where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think this is just unbelievable as to what's happening right now. And then on top of that, Jeff, we had the Washington Post this week, which I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
And I want to put up this statement here. I don't know how to make it bigger. Michelle's not here to help me. I don't know what I just did.
It's readable.
Okay. So Marty Baron, the former editor-in-chief of, managing editor, I should say, of the New York Post, put this out.
No, the Washington Post.
Washington Post, excuse me, put this out. Because the Washington Post laid off a third of its employees this week, including people who are in Ukraine in the field.
Yep.
And there are acute business problems. It is not like the current leadership of the Washington Post did anything to help those business problems. In fact, they contributed to them by pulling the endorsement of Kamala Harris, which made a lot of people, including me, unsubscribe. And so what's the upshot? The upshot is that the Washington Post is going through a very tough financial situation of its own making.
Yes.
And is now punishing its own reporters for it.
Yep. And its own readers. Yeah. Marty, I think, is the finest newspaper editor we've had in recent times in America. I respect him immensely. He brought the Post up to a point where it was providing competition to the New York Times, which was good for both, good for the country, critical. They're doing excellent work. He says in this ranks among the darkest days. Can you put that back up for me for a second?
I can try. I don't know what I need.
Michelle.
No, I can't. We need Michelle. I don't know what happens.
He said that I'll get it up on my own. Okay. He said it ranks among the most the darkest days in the history of the Post. But he also said, and I think this is really, I love this phrasing. He said the Post challenges, and he says, yes, there's business challenges, stipulated, Your Honor. The Post challenges, however, were made infinitely worse by ill-conceived decisions that came from the very top, from a gutless order to kill a presidential endorsement 11 days before the 2024 election, as you said, and a remake of the editorial page that now stands out only for its moral infirmity. Love that. Loyal readers, livid as they saw owner Jeff Bezos betraying the values he was supposed to uphold, fled the Post. In truth, they were driven away by the hundreds of thousands. I got an email last night from an Irish newspaper kind of saying, well, can you write about this? And I'm writing away. And I said, well, I think what they want is, well, how do you save the Post? Or how do we save journalism? And it's a refrain that I sing often on this show. It's really the story of the death of mass media. I talked to a former top editor of the Post, not Marty, at an event, a journalism event a couple of years ago. And this is after Will Lewis had come in, the Murdochian telegraph henchman brought in by Bezos to do his bidding. And I asked this former editor, can the Post be saved? And this is years ago. And he said, no, it's too far gone.
Yeah. That
was then. Meanwhile, we've had the endorsement decision, the turning the editorial page into a Trump mouthpiece, gutting of the paper before, huge to the best talent leaving for the Times and the Atlantic and so on. And now we have entire sections killed. Two of the best book reviewers in the country, Ron Charles and Becca Rothfield, are now gone along with Book World. And Book World used to be a leading cultural voice in the country. Style used to be. That's all gone. Foreign correspondence, sports, and so on and so on. So I don't really give a damn what Will Lewis's apparent strategy is or Bezos' strategy is.
I don't think
there is one. They're gutting the paper to the point that it becomes meaningless.
Well, I think the strategy, if there is one, is to use the paper to curry favor with Trump for Jeff Bezos's other priorities, which right now I think is Blue Origin, right? So That's why he hosted on the same day this was happening. He hosted Pete Hegseth, who's a clown, at Blue Origin, and why he pulled the Kamala endorsement. And I have to say this. He pulled the Kamala, this goes back to what we were talking about before. He pulled the Kamala endorsement for the following reason. He did not know if Trump was going to win. But he knew that if Trump did win, he would punish the paper for the Kamala endorsement. Whereas he knew that if Kamala won, she would not punish the paper for pulling it. So I'm going to say again to my friends of the Democratic Party, it is time to start being maximalist. The days of going back to norms are over.
Yes.
The next time somebody spikes an endorsement of you, you make it very clear to them that you will win, and by God, you will hold them accountable afterwards.
And your readers will hold them accountable. Your audience will hold them accountable.
Yes, that you will make sure that Blue Origin does not get whatever the hell it needs. Because if you're using your newspaper to prop up your other businesses, then that newspaper is going to pay the penalty, and you're going to pay the penalty for what you made that newspaper do. I'm sorry. I know this is not how it should operate. I know this is completely contrary to small d democracy, but that is the world we live in. And if they're going to go maximalist, we got to go maximalist too. And I think that's the part that is deeply upsetting to me, because we seem to want to live in a world, certainly Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries do, where we don't behave this way. This isn't what people behave like. This isn't how democracy is supposed to go. Friends, the country told you what it wants. The first time was an aberration. The second time was an affirmative decision.
Mm-hmm.
And now the country's telling you what it wants in every single special election. We just won a Senate race, state Senate race in Torrance County, Texas, the most Republican county in the nation, one of them. A county that Trump won by 17 points. A Democrat just flipped. How much more are you listening, or do you need to hear? And that applies to the Washington Post. If Jeff Bezos is going to exploit the Post to help his businesses, then the next Democratic president, next Democratic Congress better make sure that whatever's in the Post affects his business.
But by then, I think the Post is now meaningless.
Yes.
It's a non-entity. It doesn't matter. And let me be clear here. I'm a capitalist. Mm-hmm. I believe that the journalism has to be economically sustainable to survive. I ran a center in entrepreneurial journalism. I work on business models for news. I understand the economic necessity to support news. Having said that, the weakness we clearly see here is the ties of news to big capital puts news in an untenable position. You're either a billionaire who uses it as your toy to get favors, whether you're Jeff Bezos or Patrick Soon-Shiong at the LA Times, or you're a hedge fund that doesn't care about milking Bessie until she falls over in the field, or you're ABC, worried about what could happen to you, so you take Jimmy Kimmel off the air until you find a bigger force, or you're the Ellisons who managed to take over CBS and the mini Murdochs and turn it into the state media that it is. And as in my next book coming out in June, Hot Type, available for pre-order now. I look back at the history of when did media become the province of capital, and before the mechanization and industrialization of print. I think I've said this before on the show. The average circulation of a paper in the U.S. was 4,000, because that's as much as you could pull the press in a day before the news became stale. Come the steam-powered press, come the linotype, come stereotyping, come the telegraph. There's this wonderful character I write about named Whitlaw Reid, who was he stole the New York Tribune away from Horace Greeley. Yep. And he turned a progressive organ into a plain old capitalist organ. And he realized that capital was the key to this future of media, that equity was the key to control of that capital. And he was a dastardly soul who did that. And from then on, from the late 19th century through to now, that big company capital has been in control of our media voices. The point about the Washington Post is that, you could say, well, we got to find somebody else to buy it.
Yeah.
No, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's dead. It is dead newspaper walking. And we don't need to take over the Washington Post. We need to compete with the Washington Post, as we are doing right here and right now, and as many are doing now. And again, as I said earlier, at a human scale, away from mass media, away from scaled audiences away from the necessity of huge capital.
Yeah, I truly look. The Bulwark, which I have a lot of respect for what they built, immediately put out a thing saying the Washington Post is dead, CBS is dead, come to us, right? And absolutely, I would echo that too here, right? We don't do the same kind of journalism because they actually hire journalists, but we do break news once in a while. And look, the part of this that sucks is that there is, for example, a war happening in Ukraine right now. The Bulwark does not have the resources. Maybe they will eventually, but certainly Mayday doesn't have the resources to put somebody on the ground to cover this in Ukraine all day, every day, and to embed people and multiple teams, right? That's what the Post did. That's what the New York Times does. CNN has this, I mean, they don't use it, or at least I shouldn't say that. CNN International is actually very good. But I mean, they have teams all over the world. That's going to be very hard to compete with.
Yes, it is.
Going to be very hard to compete with.
But I think we also moved to a time when Justin Smith, who was the co-founder with Ben Smith of Semaphore.
Yeah.
I just read something he said, and Justin's a very, very smart media business guy. He said the days of sending your own correspondent around the world are over. And the smarter thing to do is to hire the person who lives in Ukraine, speaks Ukrainian, understands Ukraine. And there are Ukrainian media outlets that have important work. How do we collaborate with them? I've dorkily mentioned here before that I try to read German media because I'm fascinated about how they cover America versus us. That gives us a perspective that we don't have.
Oh, I watch Russian media all the time, but there are people like Julia Davis, who's an independent aggregator of Russian news, Olga Lautman, who I do a show with every Thursday, who are in this 24/7, knee deep in this. And those are the kind of people that should be platformed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's new models. Or look at Minneapolis. Yep. We wouldn't know anything that we know without the witnesses sharing what they witnessed, without the collaboration of that. That's the new model for media. It's small scale, collaborative, federated, deeply spread through society in ways that matter more. And go back to our political discussion about NJ11. It's going to be connections to people you trust who make you pay attention because you respect them.
Yeah. That's
the future. That's a far, far better future for media than Jeff Bezos had enough money to rescue the Post. Because for a while he did. I so feel for Marty Baron, who again I respect immensely, who in his book praised Bezos, and he reiterated that in his post. When Marty was editor, Bezos protected the Post, protected what Baron did. But then come the personal interest of Trump and other apparent life changes at midlife, Bezos changed. And so you can't depend upon the billionaire rescue. You can't depend upon good capital. We've got to build this ourselves.
It's frightening, I think, for a lot of people because this is not anything we've ever known. It's just not, right?
No. Well, certainly in our lives, absolutely not. But I wrote another little book about the history of magazines, and the newspaper was invented in around 1605. Magazines were invented in the 18th and 19th centuries as a form.
Right.
Right. Newspapers as we know them were reinvented with mechanization. Nothing's forever. And so I don't think it's clear where it goes now. And there will be chaos, and bad guys will get away with stuff because there is chaos, because they're not being covered, because there's not accountability. Yet I think I'm optimistic with my students that they can reinvent new things that are tied more to communities.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. And I think that's something that we all need to think about, and we all need to kind of ponder as to how you do it. I never thought about the fact that you're absolutely right. You could hire Ukrainians to cover the war for you. Yeah. Now, granted, old journalism would say, well, that's biased because they're obviously coming at it from a particular perspective. I don't know that an American fairly covering this war would cover it any other way, right? Like,
right.
There's definitely a white hat and a black hat in this race, and you're not going to give equal weight to both. So
right, that's really important, Julie, because we have to question some of the alleged norms of news, right? The objectivity myth that we have. There's a wonderful book called The View from Somewhere by Lewis Raven Wallace, who is trans, who was fired from a public media, not NPR, job because he would not accede to their view, which was that he was biased because he was trans. And by saying that, he writes eloquently, they were rejecting his lived experience. They were rejecting his perspective. They were rejecting all that. Now, to be transparent about that lived experience perspective is critical, so the readers can judge you on that basis. But to have that lived experience is valuable. To have the lived experience of Ukrainians in the Ukrainian war, to understand they're fighting for their lives, yes, we can judge that. We out here can judge that. To think that journalists are somehow suprahuman and we can rise above all of this and have no opinions and no views, and that we have this superpower to see things objectively is absurd. A former editor of the Washington Post, I forget which one, used to brag, and not alone among journalists, that he didn't vote because somehow voting would corrupt him.
Yeah. I've had friends like that too, who are journalists who are like, we just don't vote. I'm like, you must be kidding me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You are a member of the community, and to separate yourself, the whole problem journalism had was that it separated itself from the communities.
Yep.
It acted like we are apart from them. We are thus above them. And the irony is we judge them, but we don't judge them. By what we choose to cover, how we cover it, those are all judgments. But then we act as if, oh no, we're objective, and we don't use words like fascism. This comes at me at the end of my career, regretting that career in many ways, because the things that I was a part of, I think, had the deleterious effect on democracy that led to Trump.
I have said that for a very long time, that I was at Fox for many years, and I always thought at Fox that I was doing important things, and that I was standing up for Democrats and for democracy against this torrent of just bullshit. I don't know how else to describe it.
You were the one woman bulwark.
I was the one woman bulwark, right? And I think it's a nice fairy tale I told myself, but the reality is, in retrospect, and look, let me parenthetically say that Jessie Tarlov, who's a good friend, who took the spot that I had on the 5, is wonderful at what she does. She is fantastic. And if anybody is so inclined to watch the 5, which sadly a lot of people do, she is like everything that should be on that show. She is. However, she, as Scott Jennings said about himself, his job is to be the heel. Her job is to be the heel. Now, unlike Scott Jennings, she doesn't lie and she doesn't, make a fool of herself. But when you have a torrent of a fire hose of lies coming at you, are you enabling those people by being on that network, or are you doing the right thing by trying to at least, deconstruct?
Well, the other thing, I'm curious about your perspective. The Fox News that you were on was a different Fox News. It wasn't or maybe I could say it wasn't as extreme, or maybe I could say it was a little bit subtler. It's gone to extremes since. And is there a line?
There is no line.
There's no line.
There is no line. And I will say this, and I've said this before, and it might be, I don't know if I've said it to you or on this show, but I do believe this. My differences with Roger Ailes were quite documented.
Yes. Yes.
But this is what I believe. Roger Ailes did not believe anybody was bigger than the network. And if he had lived, I don't know that Trump would have been the person that he is, because I think that ultimately Roger would never have allowed Donald Trump to be somebody who was going to tell his network what to do. And right now, because nobody's really running the network, because it's on autopilot, making money, but it's not like there's a Roger Ailes there who's running editorial the way Roger Ailes used to. That's how Trump got to be in charge of Fox News and to tell them what they need to say. I mean, the tail is wagging the dog, whereas the dog used to wag the tail.
Yeah.
So
since we're on cable news, can I ask you one more story?
Of course.
Oliver Darcy reports that MS Now, Versant, is in talks with Crooked Media.
Yes.
To not acquire, but to, I guess, license their shows for the air. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on that.
Look, I think it's a win-win for both of them, right? Crooked gets more eyeballs and money. Certainly, I don't know what Versant's paying them, but I'm sure it's a pretty penny. So they're getting more eyeballs on them and eyeballs of a different generation. So I don't see what's in, why not? And it's a brilliant move, I think, for Versant, because they're getting a whole cohort of watchers who are going to come over from Crooked that may not be watching cable news. So I think it's actually a smart thing to do. And I'm surprised that CNN isn't trying to do the same, where they're just creating, Versant's doing this on the weekend. I'm sure if it's successful, they'll move it over to the weekday. But you're talking about bringing a whole host of new eyeballs to the network that exist for Crooked that don't exist now. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the Crooked guys.
Right.
Myself, I think that their time has come and gone. But I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense for Versant. I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense for Crooked. So
as a model, I agree, but I also agree that I don't think Crooked is the one to do. I mean, they fired Joy Reid, and Joy Reid has a podcast now. They could have Joy Reid back. They would not do that, of course. Yeah. But the point is, they could have diverse voices back rather than three white guys sitting around mansplaining the world to us.
Of course. And I had a conversation early, but sure, I would say 6 months to 9 months after I launched my Substack, and it kind of started really taking off. And I remember talking to an anchor at CNN about Substack and saying, Substack is amazing. Like, you should be on Substack. And this anchor was like, what? And I said, do you understand there's this whole ecosystem happening over on the internet, whether it's on YouTube, which is very diffuse, so YouTube's a little harder, but on Substack right. is a community. I said, do you understand that there is a whole parallel media ecosystem happening on Substack, really with writing, but also with, right now we're streaming to Substack and we're streaming to YouTube, right? Also to video. And this person was like floored. And then I remember going to a party with Acosta, with Jim Acosta, I don't know, maybe a year ago or sometime in the summer. And Acosta saying to me, don't tell anybody about the show. I said, Jim, you must be making a fortune. He goes, don't tell, I don't want anybody else coming over here. It kind of is a joke, right? Like, Acosta's the best.
Yeah.
Acosta is he's a mensch. Like, I don't know how else to say it. But he was kind of saying it like, shh, like, I don't want.
I don't pass around my parking tricks in Manhattan.
Yeah. Like, being like, I don't want those guys at CNN picking, like, what's going on. Yeah. Like, Tom Lemon got fired from CNN. He's doing just fine.
Yeah.
Jim Acosta got fired from CNN. Fired, but he's doing just fine.
Yeah.
We're like, listen, I have not been back to CNN since I wrote my column about God and about Scott Jennings. I assume I'm banned because I've never gone this long without being invited back, but I'm just fine until I just said that to you. I actually forgot that I haven't been on.
Yeah. Which also says that's how you value cable news. Yeah.
Couldn't care less. Could not care less. I use it as a means to drive eyeballs to Substack. And I'll tell you something, when I go on MSNBC, always bring a ton of subscribers over with me. When I go to CNN, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So Substack, since you're singing the praises, Ron Charles, who I mentioned earlier, was a brilliant book reviewer alongside Becca Rothfeld at the Washington Post. He immediately started, as soon as he was fired, he started his Substack. And I love the paragraph. He said, "Now is not the time to place or assign blame. There are many complicated reasons we got here. Honestly, the worst aspect of this impoverishing, family-wrecking, confidence-crushing ordeal is that it will inspire David Brooks to write an essay about the hubris of American media." So I found that amusing.
Listen, friends, Jeff is right. Like, come on in. The water's fine.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this is there's no competition. People collaborate. Like, that's, I think, one of the nicest things about what we're building here, and certainly on Substack, is like, I had Wajahat Ali on the other day, right? And every day you can go in Substack and see who's sort of the rise. I think it's called like rising stars or something, rising bestsellers, right? You can see like who's doing well that day on Substack. And, you know, sometimes Waj does better than I do. Most of the time Waj does much better than I do. Sometimes I do better than Waj, right? If this were cable news, we'd be competing with each other.
Right.
But we're not.
There's a scarcity of airtime there. There's not.
Right.
That
There's
scarcity
not
is
here.
gone.
So what we do is we talk to each other. He has me on his show. I have him on my show. And he's one example out of many, right? But like, there's no problem with collaboration because everybody's in it for the right reasons. And
it's like the very early days of blogs, where we had blog roles, where we sent we gladly sent traffic to each other. That was the ethic of it. We all benefited. And
we're going to continue to all benefit from it.
Yep.
And so from my perspective, yeah, because it's not like, oh, you know, Hannity's in the 9 o'clock and Maddow's in the 9 o'clock and Caitlin Collins in the 9 o'clock. So we all have to see who's going to get better ratings. Like, who cares? Because you could only watch one thing once, right? Whereas here, you could, you know, if you have your show and I have my show, we are all, you know, you decide to do it at 12 o'clock and I decide to do it at 12 o'clock. I could watch your show later. Or somebody could watch my show later. Like there's no competition in terms of airtime or when people are watching it. So I think it's wonderful, and I think this is the future. And it is scary because we've never grown up with anything like this. But I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And you know, it just underscores how much, you know, when I left Fox, I was naive and I thought I would be able to land a contract at another network. Because I thought that because they'd all wanted me, you know, when I was at Fox. And then, of course, it turned out that once you sue a network, the other networks are like, oh, shit, we don't want, you know, I think naively did not realize that. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. Like if I'm never on CNN again, it's their loss. It's not mine. I don't care. Yeah. If I were in their shoes, that put me and Scott Jennings on a show tomorrow just to see watch the fireworks happen because it would bring ratings. But they don't do that. They don't care about ratings anymore.
Right. Well, I thank you for involving me in the world you built here.
Of course. We love the show. We love having you. We're going to come up with a good name for it. And what else before we go? Because we've had people here for a long time. What's going on in the world of Hollywood that we have to talk about? Anything?
Well, I think this was on IMS Now yesterday. I forget who it was. Credit where it's due. But WWE chanting against ICE. F-ICE, 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 spelled out. Tied to the Grammys, unlike the Golden Globes, where folks, Bad Bunny starting it, had things to say that mattered. And I almost wish that at the Grammys, the whole audience, imagine if the whole audience of showbiz had started chanting, ICE out, right? They wore the buttons. But this is how you see movements, even when media don't see them and don't show them to you.
But let's also talk about the WWE, right? Was it WWE or was it somewhere? It was one of those, right?
It was a wrestling thing. Yeah, I'm not a wrestling guy.
I think it was the other one. But the point is, these are all Trump supporters.
Yes.
Like these are young men and older men, predominantly white, who watch this nonsense.
Yep.
And that's like UFC. That's I think where it was.
Oh yeah. Yes, you're right.
UFC, like Trump is going to build a UFC ring outside the White House. This is his base. This is the epicenter of his base.
Yes.
And they don't want this.
Right.
Whether he cares
this
or not.
Is the power of culture to join together. One person in that audience started that. Yeah. One person. And others agreed. You know, years ago, I was accused of being an influencer because I wrote about my Dell computer and I had problems with it. And I allegedly caused the stock to go down 20%, and I was called an influencer. And I always said, no, I'm not an influencer. I didn't know anything about laptops. I just had a message that resonated with people. When I said Dell sucks at the time, it's better now, a mob gathered behind me with pitchforks and torches. Yeah, what he says sucks. Not my proudest and most eloquent moment, I might add. But the messages resonate. If you say the thing at the time when people want to also say it. That's what the future of media is. That's where we go. And yes, it can be frightening. It can seem like a mob, but it's no more frightening than being turned into a mass. And there's a real opportunity for one person for one Sophie Vershbow to show me Mamdani, for one person at the UFC to scream "fuck ice," for one person at the at the Grammys to say "ice out," who has power to say "ice out." That matters, and it brings power back to a human level. So hallelujah.
And you have somebody like Bad Bunny saying what he said about ICE, and Billie Eilish, and these are not people who I can't name one song by either of them, but I understand they're pretty popular. I'm still waiting for Fish to be the halftime show. I'm still waiting for a bunch of trampolines for all of us to jump onto them.
Yeah.
Anyway, and look, MAGA gets all upset and says we're going to have our own halftime show at Turning Point USA, and it's going to be Kid Rock. Great. Great. You have Kid Rock, and we have Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
Great.
That's America.
Yeah. All right. On that note, how are you feeling? You good? You feeling
I'm getting there inch by inch. Thank God for my wife, because so for those of you, I'm laid up because I broke a part of my vertebrae and I got an infection, so I'm sitting here. So this is heaven for me because I can have human contact, and my wife can know that she's safe from me begging her to pick something up I can't reach for at least an hour. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, to all the wives in the chat, we've all been there. We've all been there. I
honestly said to her the other day, I said, seriously, if I were single, I couldn't cope.
Yeah, it's interesting about you men. You guys can't cope by yourselves.
No, we can't. No.
Whereas women would be just fine.
Yeah.
we'd be swirling Mai Tais, and
which is why you should be in charge.
I agree.
Not us.
Agreed. All right. On that note, so good to see you. So glad
good to see you.
Better. Michelle, hope everything at the house.
Building. What's she building?
It's not what she's building. There's massive construction going on in her building, and it gets so loud sometimes that
no.
So there you go. To people in this chat who say, I forgot that Bruce Springsteen has a new song going up the charts. I am from Jersey, friends. I never forget about Bruce. I have been to more Bruce shows. I've been to more Bruce shows Bruce than you can count. I was once in a restaurant in Red Bank, New Jersey at about 3 p.m. with my mother when Bruce and Patty and the kids walked in about 25, 30 years ago. And I said, Mom, that's Bruce. My mom goes, what would he be doing here? She goes, that's not Bruce Springsteen. Why would he be here? I said, what would he be doing at the Jersey Shore? Having lunch with his family? I don't know, Mom. To this day, she doesn't believe it. It was Bruce. Anyway. All right. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Yeah. We'll see you next week, Jeff, next Sunday, next Friday. I don't even know what day it is. And then Michelle and I will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern for our Saturdays for Sanity show. That Jeff, if you want to come join us, come on, join us. We'd love to have you. Where we don't talk about politics, we talk about life and try to be sane for an hour or two so people can just relax on the weekend. So if you're up for it, come let us know. All right. Great to see everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.